Anybody else from an independent school? Or are we all public? Public? Private? Cool. Should have brought candy. That's what I should have brought. Welcome. It's actually it's not. When I came. Yeah. Welcome. All right, I guess it's time to start. Thank you everybody for coming. At the end of the conference, so a lot of people are just getting ready to head on out. I thank you for staying for the last day and coming to my session. This, I wouldn't say presentation, but conversation is an offshoot of, I teach part of the coursework for the University of Pennsylvania School Leadership Program. Part of what we do is to train school leaders to be great school leaders. And I teach sort of the technology and innovation aspect of that coursework. So I thought it would make a great presentation to talk to different people and have these conversations about how we're going to lead in the new world through the 21st century. So first of all, I should turn that on first. Always a quick survey. Classroom teachers, hands on classroom teachers. People in the technology role, coaches, technology, instructional peoples, great. Any technology leadership positions, technology directors, awesome. And how about administrators? Oh, great. I got a nice mix. So we'll be able to touch on a lot of different aspects today. Word about generalizations. All schools are configured differently. We were just having a conversation. We both work at independent schools. Whether you're in public, you're an independent, configurations could be different. So we will be touching on different things there. All professionals have different skill sets. So some of the things we'll be talking about is kind of how roles are changing. So you may identify with some things, you may not identify with some things. And kind of what we're talking about are like general trends, kind of spur the conversation. So the world of educational technology is changing. I have a quote here from one of our keynote speakers we had at our school a couple years ago. I tried to find their name, but I couldn't find it. But I thought it always resonated with me, which education always changes but never evolves. I think that is now changing when it comes to educational technology, finally now. So as we're moving forward into the 22nd century, I think we're having huge changes. One of them is the diversification of skill sets. We're kind of trying to figure out where we are all fitting in the new roles of educational technology and innovation. We have teachers moving to the educational technology role. We have coaches. We have administrators that have never been trained in technology trying to hire technology professionals. There's a lot of different working pieces, and we don't know really where we're all fitting. I saw a great session at COSN, if anyone's ever been to that conference, done by Dr. Ruben Fuentedora, who created the SAMR model. And one of the things that he scared everyone in the audience with is he talked about jobs, right? And how AI and robots are going to take over jobs. The scary aspect of it is not necessarily that they're going to be one-to-one taking over jobs, but it's actually skills that these AI and jobs are taking away from these positions. So for example, if you are a surgeon in the 22nd century, you're probably going to have to know robotics because they're going to be doing a lot of robotic surgery. Lawyers are going to lose aspects of their job moving on to technology. So it's more of a, hey, what kind of skill sets are these people are going to need later on in life? So that was pretty scary to me, at least. So we're starting to finally broaden our focus when it comes to education. One great book, if you haven't read it as an educator, is called Range by David Edsvay. It's Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. It's kind of an argument against hyper-specialization. And in traditional educational places, you've become very hyper-specialized in whatever your field is. So the best English teacher is super English teacher and has all the credentials out the wazoo when it comes to English, right? And those are the best people. Well, that's kind of changing now, where you have to have that diversification of skill set in order to be able to lead throughout the 22nd century. Also, a great thing happening in independent schools right now is called the Mastery Transcript Consortium. And basically, Scott Looney out of Ohio is trying to make basically high school skill-based, right? So instead of saying, I'm graduating with an A in this class, it's like, what have you done? What have you shown? How are we going to be able to apply these skills? So there's a lot of great work happening currently in the diversification of our skill sets. So I also stole this from, it's a quote from Gandalf, but also ISTE 3 years back. One of the keynotes had this. I'm looking for someone to share an adventure that I'm arranging. It's difficult to find anyone. It's kind of the mantra of a technology coach. It's like, please come with me on my adventure. But that's what actually defines us in our roles and in our positions. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my professional journey. So education is my second career. I started off in corporate sector. I was in broadcast media for 13 years. Did a lot of different things. Then I was a classroom teacher. I taught kindergarten and second grade. For me, literacy was paramount. I wanted to really get our students to engage. I have a master's in reading specialist, so I'm also a reading specialist. But then I realized technology was a huge underserved literacy skill, not only on the students, but for the teachers as well. Now I do technology. I'm a technology coach. I've been a technology director. I've done the back end. I've done the front end. But now in my role, I'm helping teachers really utilize their technology innovation better. So part of this is my own personal wrestling with my identity, right? So as I have there, should I be specialized? So I don't know as much as maybe a full-on technology might know about network administrating and setting up your APs and all that wonderful stuff. And I may not be as specialized as a English teacher in high school. So where do I fall within that kind of spectrum? You know, what do you do is a question that I get all the time from different teachers, right? Am I a teacher or am I a technology person, right? And a lot of times, people will talk about, Andy McKee is an author of a lot of different books, says it's called downshifting. And so the teachers think of me as a tech person, and the technology people think of me as a teacher. So like, I'm constantly struggling with that identity of what I am. Our students are also struggling with this identity as we convert over to these diversifications of skills. what are they doing? What are they thinking? Are they going to be the best whatever it is? We've gone from you need to get the best grades and play the game of school to being able to show what you know, how are you thinking, frameworks of thinking, and things of that nature. So we have to start being okay with the identity. So take a second and think about your own identity. How it's shaping your current position and what you're doing in that role. So what is your background? What is your family? What are your hobbies? Things like that. Just think about that for a second and how it's shaping what you're doing. Anybody want to share something? Yeah.
So I came out of tech writing. So and then I went into education. So I worked out in Silicon Valley, and I saw these big time companies with all the names, and they were trying to figure out the education market. So that's where I thought I'll pivot. And you know, this thing was exploded to TNC, but the ed tech people 10 years ago. So I was part of the classroom for teachers, the Red Belt ranks. That's how sort of more professionalized version of ed tech came about and became more formalized. So we became a formal role in schools. And I started to classify through that CRM identity. But it's still very privileged. So I still get also do just like surf all day, or, and so my, in my little world, I had to be forced into a classroom, right? Because they didn't know what the hell any of the stuff was, right? And so it's been interesting. I mean, I'm not a teacher, and classroom management and all these things. I actually kind of called it together. And whereas my focus was skills. And that's why I'm here. Like I told you earlier, that the teacher training stuff is kind of, in my opinion, I'm sensing it's just evaporating. It's more about, are they going to get jobs? And that's what parents are asking us at a private school. The price is high, and they're saying, I don't know if my kid can get a job. And that's what I get in parent teacher interviews. Well, that's the question.
Anybody else want to share? Something to share about their identity? So, how can we position our teachers, administrators, and tech leaders through the 21st century? And many of them have little or no training, right? Like, he's coming from a tech-based world where he doesn't have necessarily the classroom management skills. We have administrators that have no technology or innovation skills. And we have teachers that, now we're seeing more roles like instructional coaches and things like that are helping them out. But for the longest time, they kind of been just left out to dry, right? So first we have to remember that technology, especially educational technology, is on a spectrum, right? So on one side of the spectrum, we have like the corporate IT director. He's the wizard behind the curtain, the Wizard of Oz, doing all the different tech stuff and making sure all that stuff works, right? And then we have the tech savvy teacher. That's the person who just knows that like they're an educator and they just happen to be able to navigate Gmail really well, and they get kind of thrown into that role. And we have a lot of stuff kind of in between, and we find different people in these roles throughout that spectrum. So teachers need to integrate technology seamlessly into the curriculum instead of viewing it as an add-on, an afterthought, or an event. Heidi H. Jacobs, really great book called Curriculum 21 if you haven't read it. Amazing. So the teacher's identity has changed recently because if you're familiar, hopefully you're familiar with TPAC. Previously, teachers have pretty much only been concerned with pedagogy and content. And now we've thrown a whole new Venn into their identity, which is it comes to technology. Now, a lot of our teachers still haven't bought into this, unfortunately. If we're here, if you're a teacher here, obviously you have. But that's a huge shift in their identity. So it's more important than ever to value these technology skills within your institution. So a lot of institutions have teachers that are like, yeah, it's really good to use technology, but I just worry about reading and math, right? So we have to value it, right? And we have to have our teachers be able to diversify their skills and understand it's not an add-on anymore, and it's not a special. This is something that all our students are going to need to succeed in that world and get jobs and do all the other stuff. And technology is a core literacy. So how does this look to a teacher? You have to be able to give them the new tools, right? Interactive displays, Apple TVs if you want to do the wireless software. You're always, and that's kind of why we're here, right? We're looking for these different tools that we can bring back to our districts and our teachers. New curricular expectations, right? So a lot of districts will not allow technology necessarily bleed into it. Some public schools do, depending on standards and all that kind of stuff. But technology, again, is an afterthought, not actually built within the curriculum. Pressure to crowbar more into your already full day. Teachers already have an overscheduled day. And now we're like, hey, now you have to add all these awesome technology things. So we have to figure out, what's going to go and what's going to stay. One of the conversations I have all the time is cursive writing, right? Cursive writing should be taught to our students. And my response is, okay, I think cursive writing is amazing. But what are we going to take out of that day? Because something's got to go. I would love to have the students for 12 hours each day, but we just don't have that. And teachers often get little to no training or support, right? So a lot of teachers, some schools have coaches, some schools have tech people, but a lot of times it's like, all right, here you go, jump into the pool and have fun. So we have to give them that support. So how you can lead as a teacher is, first of all, you're here, yay! You are at this conference, which is amazing because a lot of teachers don't even make this step. Remember, administrators are just as scared as you when it comes to technology. A lot of them do not have any formal training when it comes to technology either. So work in partner and in tandem with them to help forward that mission. Reflect on your curriculum and add where appropriate. I'm sure you've seen a lot of times and heard a lot of places here that says, don't just add it to add it. Technology is only there when it's going to benefit what you're doing. If it doesn't benefit your lesson, don't even use it. Think about standards and frameworks. I know in public school you have a lot more standards, but in my school we've shifted completely from any kind of skill-based learning to thinking frameworks of computer science and engineering design process, and that really helps the teacher be able to incorporate more things into their day. Don't be afraid to fail. Obviously, we talk about that. I'm sure you've heard that at a million different conferences here, but be excited, not afraid. I read a study not too long ago that says if you're about to embark on something and you say, I'm excited about it, just saying I'm excited about it makes you less afraid and more able to succeed. So don't fear it. So administrators, in a wicked world, relying upon experience from a single domain is not only limiting, but it can be disastrous from that range book. So a scenario. You are in a classroom observing a teacher. They're one of the most tech-forward teachers in your school. However, for this particular lesson, they do not use technology. Part of your observation form requires you to rate them on the usage of technology. How do you rate them? What conversations do you have in post-observation? The spoiler alert, this happened to one of my colleagues. And they got in trouble. Does any administrator want to take a crack at this?
Well, yeah, you're saying that they got in trouble because that particular point in time that they went into that room, they didn't use technology.
Correct.
As an administrator, you need to have an understanding of your teachers. And yeah, that may not have happened that day, but from other things. So I think you take a look at the bigger picture instead of just that one point in time.
And I think that we walkthroughs, not just a formal observation all the time, but walkthroughs you cover seeing that technology, in other parts of the lesson.
I was going to say on the teacher side, I've done teaching now on the tech side, but on the teaching side, if it's a formal observation, you typically know what's being expected. Like, walkthroughs a little different, you can say, but, you know that the principal's coming for a formal observation, you know what's required.
And to your point, from this colleague of mine, the post-observation conversation they had with the administrator says, hey, you knew it was coming. You should have added, just added it. because you knew that was going to be one of my check boxes. So my point to this exercise is that we kind of have to get out of the mindset, go back to what you're doing is, technology has to be purposeful, right? If you start just going after your teachers and saying, hey, you need to use it because it's on my checkbox, right? That sends the wrong message as an administrator. That's not leading your building into using purposeful technology. It's just doing a little dance to make sure everything works. So you have to kind of reevaluate what you're doing. So think back. What do you know about technology? Did your leadership program prepare you to hire technology professionals? What can you do to position technology to succeed at your institution? One of the great things that we did with our UPenn cohort was I got our technology director to come in and have a conversation. And basically all he did was string tech babble together. And they didn't know anything. These are people that were going to be in a position to hire a technology director sometime in their career. And they had no idea. And quite honestly, as someone with technical skills, you can throw a lot of stuff out there in the interview process and no one will ever know the wiser. So as an administrator, and again, if you're here, you're already doing that, you have to take the steps to be able to educate yourself at least a little bit to be able to do that. So, as we know, education often does not understand technology, and education often does not value technology either. You know, a lot of times the teacher thinks technology is tertiary at best, if not even further down that priority list. So you have to kind of make it a priority in your districts. You know, do not place teachers in vital tech roles without tech knowledge. You know, not so much anymore, but previously I used to work in public schools, and they used to put teachers that lost their certification in a technology role, teachers that weren't really that good, and having some troubles in the district. They're like, oh, we're just going to kind of put them in technology. So those kinds of things kind of really hinder the innovation process in your district. But also I would say that, you know, there's a public school that I know of that uses technology coaches, but they don't actually look for technology skills. It's like seniority kind of thing. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. Don't hire tech people that don't understand EDU. And I have a couple of asterisks there because it depends on your configuration. Like if you have just a full-in background technology director, that's not necessarily as important. But still, you have to have an understanding as the business. If you're a technology director of a Fortune 500 company, you don't know anything about the actual business, that's going to be a problem. How's your school valuing technology? And when it comes to the actual technology in your classrooms, is it just for admissions if you're an independent school, or is it just to check boxes? So radical changes to technology leadership. Previously, we were all about the what and the how. Like, how are we going to make this work? How are we going to make the Wi-Fi stay up? That kind of stuff. And now we're shifting more to the why. Why are we using this? How can it better position our students for success? How can it better position our teachers for success? So instead of just a technology director, you're seeing more positions that are coming up, like innovation director, the different coaches, educational technology director, things like that. So it's starting to diversify out there, and school districts are really having trouble figuring out what to do with it. So let me let you meet Josh and Pete. Josh is the director of the information security of a Fortune 500 company. Pete is just the vice president of information systems. Both of these people make over $180,000 a year. Josh is just concerned about security. Pete's just about information systems. Here is an EDU position that I took off at AIS for the public school people. That's the National Association of Independent Schools. This is everything from that post that they were looking for this person to do. Everything in red, in my opinion, is a standalone job by itself, right? So not only they wanted them to do the back room, front room, teach classes, train teachers and staff, device repair, G Suite, cybersecurity, they want them to do everything for about an average of $60,000 to $80,000, $90,000 a year. It's ridiculous, right? I met a gentleman at lunch in this conference who does all of this right now for a school that's local to mine. And I'm like, do you ever get to sleep? Right? But it's more than that. It's more like they also report to the academic dean, right? So that shows where you value your technology person. If you're reporting to the head of school or superintendent of the district, that shows something, right? If you're reporting to the academic dean or director of curriculum or CFO, all these kind of broadcast what you're doing. Oh, last thing is considered staff. Our last technology director left our school because faculty get treated differently than staff. And this person was considered staff. So there's a rule where faculty can have their kids in our school on year 1, staff has to wait 3 years. So you have to start thinking about what are your policies that are affecting the technology people as these roles become more blended. Remember the spectrum? So again, on one side you have education, the other side you have tech. A lot of schools, for some reason, it's usually financially based, are trying to find someone that can do everything. And I think most of us, while we are probably pretty good at a lot of different things, are not necessarily experts in everything. And if they're looking for that, what I call the unicorn, it's going to be really tough to meet those expectations of the schools. I was recently in a school, and I'm an educational coach. I'm firmly planted on the educational side of technology. I had the lady from the business department come over to me and say, yeah, 2 of our software pieces are not talking to each other. Can you write a program to make them talk to each other? And, I can't blame her. She just has a lack of understanding of how that works. But it's within that culture that, hey, you're just a tech person, so you should be able to do everything. And I'm saying you're going to put yourself in a really dangerous position if that's how you view it. This is from EdTech Salary Survey. It's hard to keep good people in EdTech, absolutely. Corporations pay a lot more money, and they're a lot more thankful a lot of times. 46% of EdTech professionals working in schools said they would consider a corporate tech job. I'm not surprised. So what can you do as a school leader? Define your technology mission and vision. A lot of times, we are not defining these things for our staff and faculty. What do you want your students' experience to be? How should a teacher be using available tools? For as a tech coach, if you as an administrator are like, hey, I expect all my teachers to be using technology, that helps us be able to move that forward. What kind of mindset do you have towards technology? Are you yourself saying, everybody, we're now on Google, everybody should be using Google Forms, but I'm going to send everything out in Microsoft Word? Are you doing that? That sends a message. And that goes back to the model. Define success for your technology leader. What does a win look like? For my technology people, do you know what a win looks like? I'm kind of in this nebulous half nether region of technology and education where it's like if a teacher uses our product, great. If a teacher knows how to use their email, great. But what does a really win look like? How do I know I'm doing a good job as a technology director? How do you position them for success? And do you use your tech department as sacrificial lambs? Right now we're having a conversation about printing, which is like the third rail of education. They're making the technology department lead the charge when it's an actual administrative decision to cut back on the print. But unfortunately they're going out in front of it because other people have to implement it. So how are you positioning them for success? Celebrate your tech people. I had a superintendent once said, no one claps from the promised land. Technology, it's so true. When nothing is wrong, everything's great. As soon as something goes wrong, you're the worst person in the world. What benefits do you have for your technology people? Are they treated differently than faculty? Team EA. This is from our school. Every year our most esteemed faculty member does some sort of team building thing, and he printed out these magnets for everyone. For everybody in school. We're going to celebrate our entire institution. He's got everybody on there. What are we missing? Got housekeeping. We're missing technology. It's not even on there. They don't see it. They just don't see it. So you have to, as administrators and leaders in your building, you have to make it more apparent that these people are here to support, right? Poor Max was a technician that I had the pleasure of working with. He got nominated by the teaching staff to be teacher of the month because he was so awesome. Administrators said, sorry, he's not a teacher. He can't be teacher of the month. So they took away that recognition from him, even though he was nominated. So we have to kind of rethink the way we're doing some things as we're blending these identities. Now, education drives the bus. Remember, we all know this, right? We have a lot more tools at our service. I'm sorry about the deeper tech people, but managed services, cloud capabilities. There's a lot of things that are taking away the reliance of a more deeply focused tech person and allowing these diverse skill sets to be able to manage things effectively. Value skill sets, I'm not going to belabor that point. But network administrators want to administrate networks, and teachers want to teach. A lot of times, the most common thing I hear in schools today is, hey, you're a network administrator, you should come and teach a class. It's like, you didn't go to school for that, right? That might not be his passion. You wouldn't do that to a teacher and say, hey, I need you to go to the back room and start unplugging stuff in the closet. We don't do that, but we have this expectation that our technicians, they should be coming over to education. So we have to really kind of value that, right? And reimagining our art chart, or who's reporting to whom, what's the professional's journey and their unique skill set. So technology professionals, I'm going to talk about you now too. Technology is just a tool in terms of getting the kids working together and motivating them. The teachers are the most important. I firmly believe that because that's why we're here. That's our business. So again, remember, education drives the bus. It's tough. We know, right? We have that forbidden fruit. We can see that teachers using 2-digit passwords is a problem. And we don't know why they're not going to use a more complicated system. And you have 40 meetings and problems about changing password conventions. We know. We get that. We have that level of knowledge that a lot of people don't see. But education's driving the bus. Storage usage, things like that. We know that, and it's really tough to have that knowledge. Change takes time. You have to build the relationships. One of the things that I hear most frequently when it comes to technology directors and technology professionals is they hide in a room someplace and they never see them. Make sure you walk the floors, talk to people, things like that. I'm sure most of you are doing that. But a lot of times you're going to be put in a position to coach up, right? Because your administrators and your leaders, your heads of school or superintendents, they're not going to really know anything about technology. So hopefully they put you in a position to help them as well. And a word about branding. This has been much more prevalent recently, and they're starting to make rules and stuff about this stuff. So I see a lot of technology professionals in education kind of affiliate with a company or some kind of product. We should really be product agnostic. We should be getting products that are best tools for the job. So I really appreciate if you're like a CISO ambassador, or you're a Google educator, or an Apple distinguished person. But when we start letting that drive the bus, that gives a lot of challenges. And it starts to look a lot like NASCAR drivers, where a lot of these technology professionals have all these different advertisements all over their stuff. And that comes from technology education being a very thankless job, right? You don't get a lot of pats in the back. You don't get a lot of help. But you have these companies that are really kind of there to fill in that void and be like, oh, you're awesome. So just be wary of that for everyone. Technology must be like oxygen, ubiquitous, necessary, and invisible. Chris Lehman, one of our local principals. Learn as much as you can. You have to be realistic on both sides. You know, when you're going, one of the challenges that teachers and tech people have all the time is you want to go to a PD and the person who runs the PD is like, that's not really in your job description. Why would you want to go do that? Well, again, when we're diversifying those skill sets and having those divergent thinking, we need to be able to expand and grow as we feel that we need to, right? So why wouldn't a technology director want to take a class on classroom management or a PD on that? Or responsive classroom or something like that. Not necessarily another certification class, right? And the same token goes on the other side is teachers often get trapped within their content areas and they really have to pull teeth to go to a different PDs like this conference right here. Don't live in Lake Wobegon. If anyone ever watched or listened to Prairie Home Companion. One thing they used to always say is, welcome to Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and all the children are above average. You have to be very honest with what's going on in technology. You know, a lot of times I've seen technology directors get into trouble because every time you talk, teacher's like, hey, my Wi-Fi dropped out the other day. I'm having problems with it, right? Now, from a technology aspect, we know that it's cyclical. Sometimes that happens. It's probably not a problem. You're going to get an alert if something really bad happens. But the technology director might be like, oh, it's working perfectly. And to a teacher, that's not really comforting at all. So we have to make sure we're reflective and helpful in those aspects where we know technology will fail. Technology is not perfect, and we have to be honest about that. So we try our best to make things work, but we can't live in Lake Wobegon. Be proactive and not reactive. And I would say that this is more on the educational side than the tech side. Technology side is pretty much proactive in the most instances I've seen. They can see down the line and they know where the danger is going to be. But a lot of times, educators have a problem with that. So for example, social media is a big thing right now. Usually people don't evaluate their social media policies until something bad happens, right? What are we doing to teach our kids digital citizenry? Usually it's very cursory until a kid posts something online and everybody's at all the news vans are out front, right? So we have to be proactive with that. Cybersecurity, another thing. Like I said, most schools are like, well, our teachers shouldn't have to change their passwords every 90 days. You know, and the technology directors pulling their hair out like, we're a soft target, what are we going to do? So we have to be proactive and train our teachers and model those things for our students. Have your long-term goals. Where do you want to be? Where do you want your technology to go? What are you going to do in 3 to 5 years? And make your technology more than a showpiece. It's great that you got this awesome digital bulletin board that's 55 inches or 85 inches. But what are you actually going to use it for in technology? It's okay that you don't know. Humility is a good thing and lead into it. A lot of times in education, we like to be the expert of things. Right? When we don't know something, we feel vulnerable. We try to play that in front of our students all the time, like, I am a content expert, I know more than you. And even in technology, when teachers ask you a question, you may not know the answer, but 9 times out of 10 you just sit there, let me Google it real quick, and you're Googling it. But it's okay not to know, and to show that is very important to everybody in your organization. Administrators, and I would say even technology directors, you have to find people to translate. You guys are speaking 2 different languages. You're speaking education, you're speaking technology. That's when it's really important to have a coach or something in between to be able to pull from both sides and go, all right, this is what they really meant. This is what they really meant. You need that person to translate those languages for you in order to work things more effectively. We had, I don't know if you've ever had this challenge, but we've had technology directors in the past, their first week on the job, suddenly they're pulling all this technology out of classrooms, they're putting in new things and all that, and the teachers are flipping out and they're like, whoa, what's going on here? Oh, well, this will all be great for you, and here's the reasons why. Oh, did you talk to me about it? Like, what about what I need, what I want? So it's that communication and having that conversation that's really going to be helpful. Now, we're starting to really think about physical structures now, right? So at another conference I was at, I was talking to a public school, actually in Pittsburgh, north of here, that's rethinking the actual physical layout of their entire campus. As you can see, this is my high school that I went to in New Jersey, and it's, this is the science wing, this is the music wing, this is this wing. Things aren't working that way anymore. We do a partnership with Villanova University, and Villanova University has started to change how they do this. So they have now what they call hubs, where the students can come together from different content areas to have these discussions of like, I'm a lawyer working with an engineer and an English major. How can we make a product or do some kind of project or something like that together? And more schools, especially secondary schools, are really starting to do this. And they're starting to rethink their physical spacing. I call it going more towards a lower school format, because lower school has been cross-collaborative forever. You know, you don't just go necessarily to a math class in lower school. It's a little bit more collaborative. Now, they got away from that for a little while, but I think they're going back to that. So as you move forward, you're going to have people dancing across the curriculum as opposed to just being that one content area thing. So, major takeaways from this is lean into your discovery with technology, define and value your technology as a core literacy, support your teachers, they're the ones that need the support, reimagine your org chart in physical spaces, hire the right people, and then trust them to lead. That's important. And make sure you celebrate your technology. Now I want to open it up to any questions or challenges or things that you're facing in yours. Does this resonate with anyone so far? Any seen any kind of parallels of what they're doing at their schools? I'm an educator, so I have wait time. It's good.
I've been trying to figure it out. So I mean, like the new industry is defining a lot of what we're trying to do as far as our skill set. And I know I keep kind of repeating this, but that's what keeps getting repeated is, you know, what kind of career, relevant college majors, right? We're a college preparatory school, so a lot of our students are taking maybe 6 to 8 years to graduate, and that's concerning. So these are things we're bringing back, and then the people, if we get money or find money, we want to hire more tech-related people, but we can't pay them right now. So, like that Python programmer makes $40,000 a year.
And that's a big challenge that we're having in education is that little, how are we going to pay these people, right? And that goes back to the valuing of it, right?
So do you see education trying to change their pay scale and move to combine with industry so that they can deliver the skill set? Or?
So the good thing is when I speak with parents, right? The parents at my school are very leaders of the industry. They're having a challenge because they're feeling that their students are coming out unprepared for the world, right? So we recently did a whole study on our computer science department, and the biggest takeaway we got from universities and industry was that you don't need to teach them to code. We don't care about coding. Whatever's going to be there when they graduate, it could be completely different. What we need is the thinking frameworks. We need to know how to think logically, creatively, and critically. So as the students progress throughout their time in K through 12, that's what they want us to focus on. Now, knowing Python is great, but just because you learn Python doesn't mean that's going to be the language they need, right? And the challenge is that when you, like, one of the biggest discussions we have right now is our AP courses, right? AP Computer Science. Well, that's great, but then it comes to the point where, well, I'm going to be a doctor. I don't need that. I don't have to do that. I don't need that. Right? Or I'm going to be, lit major. Why would I need that? But what we're seeing is that pretty much throughout the entire spectrum of all careers are going to eventually have to have some type of this in their field. And that's where the big problem is going to happen.
I think like the big divide, the struggles like the struggling principals is the divide among staff. You have teachers that significantly more advanced, the other teachers are more like that.
Yeah.
So, trying to meet the needs of both of those. We've done some different things, and people certified training, education training for all staff. 80% of staff who certified.
May I ask what your role is?
I'm not much school.
Principal? All right, so one of the things, and I'm not going to ask you because I don't want to put you out there, but one of the things that I have a problem with that a lot of schools don't do is there's nothing that's compelling teachers to use technology, right? We have, Danielson models for schools. We have all these different things, faculty growth and evaluation programs, but none of them usually speaks to technology. So, one of the things that I advocate for is put one one objective, even if it's an informal objective where the teachers in your your office talking about how they did that year. If you have one objective that's technology focused, that gives first of all, it has the teachers think, I should be doing something different this year or something new. But it also gives people like me, the technology coach, if you haven't, I don't know if you do, or sometimes technology professional, that cover to go in there and be like, hey, at the end of the year they're going to ask you about that objective. How can I help? Right? Instead of, if you're in a position like saying, hey, you should use Flipgrid. And here's let me give you the dance about Flipgrid and how wide should we do. Oh, you don't want to use that? Oh, use Seesaw. Seesaw is awesome. Do it. So you want to make it more the onus of the teacher to be their professional growth. That's how I would phrase it. And that's kind of starts getting rid of that divide. Because yes, you're right. He might not be able to log into his email, and he might be programming, right? Just doing scripts all over the place. So my goal is to grow both of them. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else want to share? Any challenges that they're having in? How would you rate your level of technology expertise? If you're not, unless you're not a technology professional, but a classroom teacher, like obviously you're here, so that's a good start. But what PDs are you giving access to? Like, what things are you done in your districts that allow you to grow in that aspect of your, whether you're a principal or stuff like that? Because I'm sure you have PDs out, a ton of PDs doing different things, but how much are technology focused, right? Oh, great! So you had the frame, that mindset.
You know, we do those things, and then we do it individually, and those kind of things. But so it's challenging in just a wide range. So like, it looks like they're going to be a teacher.
Right.
Is there any room?
I think that one of the challenges when you have that spectrum, I think of PD, to answer your question. So I was a Spanish teacher for a long time, then I moved into educational technology and now the instructional coaching. When I was a Spanish teacher, I kind of knew the type of PD I should get. I was on that far end of the teaching spectrum that you had up there, and it was very easy to identify my PD and if I was succeeding at my job. But now that I'm in that middle space where people trying to identify me as a unicorn, I have both ends that I feel like I need to develop on. I never feel like I have enough tech, and I never feel like I have enough, well, they put me in the lower school now, so that's a whole new world. I used to teach high school. Like I don't feel like I have enough of that, so I find myself stretched.
Yep.
You know, I'm taking the responsive classroom trainings, and I'm also doing what was offered by Advis, you know, on the tech side, or just trying to learn things, learn coding, learn robotics, and that's not a comfortable space. I mean, I enjoy learning, but at some point, if you look at my calendar, I feel like I have PD every week.
Yep.
And it's not easy to identify. You don't know if I'm a teacher one day or on the back end another. And that's a challenge.
And one of the things I think that helps that is when your administrator defines it, right? Because that's my challenge. Like, you know, I have the same thing where it's like I could be 3 million different PDs depending on what it is the flavor of the week. But like when your administrator says, this is what I want you guys to do and how what your role should be, I think that's very helpful. Now the other thing is, coming from a Spanish teacher, my wife also presented here. She does robotics. She's a world language Spanish teacher for high school. And she uses robots in her classroom, right? And the pushback that she gets is that, oh, well, why aren't you just doing the normal culture stuff, right? Flags, food, all that stuff. That's the pushback she gets. And her pushback is, they're doing this in other countries. They're using robots. They're using technology in other countries. We should be teaching them this aspect of these other countries and cultures. But like, it's just that challenge of thinking through outside of those lenses that's challenging. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
So I think a big challenge for me, I used to be a high school English teacher, and I moved into the role as a school counselor, but as an English teacher, I was also going to try out all the computer programs. LMS is the one that I piloted. So the teachers are used to coming to me for technology as a teacher, but now that I've moved into the office, it's tougher, and it's very interesting to me how many people are not utilizing our technology. Like, we have one-to-one computers, we have smart boards in every room, we have tons of technology for the teachers to use, but it's kind of strange to me that not everyone's utilizing it. wish I knew more, and the person I work with closely, he's not very savvy, so it's kind of been interesting.
If you don't mind me asking, what support do you have in your school? Do you have a coaching system?
We
or?
have a coach, we have one coach for the whole district, although we're not very big.
Mhm.
We have a tech director, and then we have, she has someone who kind of works with her. They do have some people trained, like staff trained, to help like in high school.
For teachers, you mean, or staff?
Teachers.
Okay.
It's frustrating sometimes.
Right, and then, so a lot of times someone will say to me, oh, that teacher's so dedicated, she'll sit and clock every night. And usually to me, I'm like, she's got to reevaluate her processes, right? Because a lot of times, what it is we have teachers that have been doing it for a long time, and they're amazing teachers, they're great people, but they haven't evaluated what they're doing and how they can make it easier and better. I still have teachers, and I'm not saying anything against the newsletters and stuff like that, but they spend 6 hours on a Sunday generating a classroom newsletter. I'm like, there's other ways you can get easier access to this information, better content for your parents. Like, you just have to have that curiosity of thinking outside that box a little bit and getting away a little bit into your stretch zone, right? And that's why I think you were doing a great role, because obviously you had the good relationships to get the teachers to move forward. And I'm hoping there's someone that filled that void, but it sounds like they're still in your office sometimes. Anyone else? Thank you for all the sharing. It's great to hear the different aspects of things. Yeah.
I'll share one last thing.
Sure.
So I've been doing the instructional coaching stuff and the tech integration, whatever you want to call it today.
Yes, stop.
2010. My latest practice that I find to be more successful than my previous ones is to never lead with the technology. So when I'm assigned to work with someone, or someone comes to me, even though I know which technology I think they should be using or that I'd like to see in my division, I try to write the objective for them or help them write an objective without naming it. So for example, I had a principal that wanted to use Seesaw. She loved it, she saw it, she was like, we need to be using this. I said, okay. So when I met with the teachers, I didn't even name Seesaw. I said, hey, your principal would like for you to communicate, with families in a more sort of real-time way. What do you think we should do? And then I just let them sort of get to that place. But I know that if I had started my conversation with, the principal wants us to use Seesaw, let's figure out how to do this, which I would have easily have done like a couple of years ago. It doesn't take traction because that, using a language acquisition term, that affective filter was too high, right? They hear the tool, they think there's a lot of meaning behind it, it's too hard, and they don't see the purpose right away. So I start with an objective and a purpose that they can recognize. I had the whole newsletter issue as well with teachers who were spending way too much time, they couldn't get it out, and I said, well, would you like to sort of figure out a way to reduce your time creating newsletters as opposed to coming out and saying, recycle a Google slide, right? There's ways of doing it, especially with teachers, they're balancing their time. When they see me, they know that that's their prep time being taken away, right? So if I'm going to compete with prep time or after school time, I try to make it so they don't even see the tech coming, almost like a Trojan horse.
Yeah. Right. And that's a challenge for a lot of tech coaches is those conversations where you want to make it their idea almost, right? Like they have to come to that conclusion. You're there to help them support it. But it's funny. A lot of teachers, I would even say your administrative assistants, get locked in this. They don't have enough time to actually think about what they're doing, so they can't actually change it and do anything. So one of my major goals in my work is to work with our administrative assistants to say, let's look at your process. I have one teacher that's been doing, one administrative assistant that's been doing it for 20 years, and she does almost everything manually, right? And she's pulling her hair out, but she doesn't have the time to necessarily think about it. And she doesn't get to go to PDs because she's the administrative assistant. She doesn't get to go to those things. So it's important that you have those conversations and allow that space to let them kind of just think about their process and how they can make things better. Great. Unless someone else has something to share, if you have any questions and you want to talk to me one-on-one, I'll be here for a little bit. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks.
It's hot. Actually, can't do sessions
Oh, okay.
neighbors.
Yeah, I know you're a librarian. We went to Oxford once. Yeah.
Actually, an office with them we work together.
So you're not doing technology coaching in lower school?
I'm an immigration specialist at the school.
Oh, is that what?
So, that's what I was like, why not call me?
What is your role entail as an information specialist?
So, we're using our lessons in lower school. Pretty much controlling education practices is all there. I recognize that ladies that they want expectations. What I call it different things. So, for example,